We're joined in the studio now by the new Auckland Mayor Phil Goff. Would you pay an extra $5 a night to visit Auckland? I know some of you wouldn't pay anything to visit Auckland, but we'll set that aside. That is vaguely what's being proposed by Phil Goff in a bid to raise extra money that would allow him to cap rates increases at 2.5%. Mayor Goff reckons the levy, which would see higher rates imposed on the accommodation industry, would raise about $30 million a year. Welcome to your first interview on Checkpoint.
Yes, thank you, John. Great to be in the studio.
Nice to have you with us. So let's start at the beginning. You promised that you would cap rates increases at 2.5%.
And I will.
Okay, which means you've got to find some money from somewhere else, right?
Exactly. Look, a year ago, Aucklanders were paying, just under 10%, 9.9% in rate increases. Next year, if my proposal goes through, it'll be a quarter of that. It was going to be 3.5. We'll pull it back to 2.5. And that's good, because the ratepayers have carried the burden of growth in Auckland for a long time.
Except you want to spend some money on things, right?
I still need infrastructure. I need infrastructure for roads. I took 2 hours to get from the city to Pukekohe the other night to visit my new grandchild, all 2 days old.
Congratulations, Grandad.
I'm feeling very special about that.
That's very exciting. But as the crow flies, I mean, in a normal, in good traffic...
You could do that in probably 50 minutes, and it took me twice that length of time. So we've got another 800 cars a week on the road.
There will be some people sitting on the Southern Motorway now saying, actually, that's not bad, it's taken me longer, right?
Well, I leave home before 6 in the morning to beat the rush in the morning, and I get home after 8 at night to beat the rush at night. But, you know, ordinary folk trying to go about the city are just gridlocked, and they've had a guts full of it. We need to spend more on transport infrastructure. So I've got to find new ways of raising money. So I've come up with 3 or 4 new ways of raising money without dumping the burden on the long-suffering ratepayer.
Right, let's talk about this accommodation levy. So this is per bed per night, is it?
Yeah, the way in which we can do it, we could do it on a capital charge or a land charge or on a pan tax, probably is the way that they do it in a lot of other countries overseas. At the moment, we spend 20 to 30 million promoting Auckland as a city for tourism, for events.
So AT spends that, right?
Yeah, AT, to Auckland Tourism Events and Economic Development. And where do they get that from? They get it off the ratepayer. And the ratepayer says to me, look, we think it's good to have tourists coming to Auckland, but hey, we don't get the direct benefit of that, the accommodation industry does, or the visitor does.
But hold on a sec, we do get the direct benefit of it because there is an awful lot of people working in the service industry.
We create jobs.
Yeah, exactly.
We get an indirect
and
benefit.
that is, well, jobs is direct, isn't it?
Well, I would say for a person living out in the south of Auckland or on the North Shore or out in the west, they'd say, look, the primary beneficiary is the visitor that comes here. And, you know, it's a great city to visit, despite what you said in the intro.
I was just anticipating the emails.
Just south of the Bombay Hills. Yeah, I know. But actually the accommodation provider, well, they get the benefit, won't be paying the levy. The levy will fall on the visitor. So a visitor staying at a 4 or 5 star hotel in Auckland, they're probably paying $280, $380 a night. They might have to pay another $6 to $10. That's not going to discourage them, but it will raise...
What about a visitor and a backpackers?
Be much less than that, because unless, if we do it on a pan tax, it's probably equal. If it's on a capital or a land value tax, it'll be much less.
Right, you said how much it will raise?
It will raise about 20 to 30 million, and that will be money that the ratepayer no longer has to pay to AT to promote our city. So that's a direct benefit to the ratepayer, and it will be met by the visitor who is enjoying the services that they get when they come to the city.
Okay, so $20 to $30 million is worth having. It means you can cap rates increases at 2.5%, but you're talking about transport infrastructure. I know that you are working on initiatives around homelessness and the housing crisis in the city. $20 to $30 million is going to buy
doesn't go very far.
15 villas in Ponsonby. Not even that.
What we're looking at, I mean, here's Auckland's dilemma. We can raise money by rates, but people feel a bit rated out, and understandably so. We can raise money by borrowing, but we can't go beyond a prudential level of borrowing. And that borrowing level is set at a debt-to-revenue ratio of 265%. If we exceed that, then we'll be paying tens of millions more in interest rates. And at the moment, we're at 256%. So we're less than 10% under the limit. If we increase our revenue, we can increase the borrowing to provide long-term infrastructure. And you can borrow for long-term infrastructure, just like you can for your mortgage. So how am I going to get that? Well, one of the ideas I've put up, but this requires government approval, unlike the visitor levy, the government would have to approve a regional petrol tax. But I'm saying this.
The government doesn't want to approve that, do they?
they're not keen, but they understand our dilemma. And, you know, I am finding that government ministers are sympathetic to the dilemma that we face. We've got to have more infrastructure because we're growing by 40 to 45,000 people a year. Now, with the petrol tax, at least it bears some relationship to using our transport system as against the interim transport levy, which is extra rates. And you know what? A big multinational business in New Zealand pays exactly the same amount as somebody on the minimum wage for that interim transport levy. Somebody that is a pensioner that hardly gets out on the road pays the same amount as you and I who use the roadways all the time.
Okay.
So a petrol tax would make more sense, but I have to get government to agree to that.
Okay. The other thing you need from government is more money. I mean, that's the elephant in the room, isn't it? That actually 1 in 3 taxpayers live in Auckland. Is there a quid pro quo for that? Is Auckland getting its share? Now, the rest of the country is going to scream, yes, they are. But actually, you want more money from central government.
Yeah, I'll be certainly making the case for that. Look, at the moment, when we grow by 45,000 people a year, that's a large percentage of those are paying taxes. They're paying income tax, they're paying GST, they're paying company tax. That money goes to central government. But the cost of meeting that growth in our city each year falls on us as Aucklanders. So I'm saying to central government too, we're getting over 50% of the growth. If you had a good regional development policy and you could share that around, I'd be happy about that. But at the moment, we're having to absorb a city the size of Tauranga every 3 years. And we can't do that out of our current funding basis. And Bill English understands that. John Key understands that. The other ministers understand that. So we're going to have a discussion, a debate, a negotiating session and say, for New Zealand to succeed, Auckland's got to succeed. That's where the growth is coming. How can we work together to get that? And one of my proposals is the petrol tax, one is the visitor levy, and the other is a targeted rate on large-scale new greenfields development.
Phil Goff, the new Mayor of Auckland, thank you. I know you've got to go off to the Indian Business Association Awards. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thanks.
Appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure, John. Cheers.